Welcome everyone to Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden and I'll be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about health and fitness, but in a different way, because we're going to be bringing on a movement specialist, not a fitness trainer, not a fitness coach, a movement specialist. And it might be the first time you're hearing these words put together. Movement specialist. So they're going to help me with me moving. I can move by myself good and well. But the problem with what we do here in the West is that we give ourselves optional movements. So for example, we have to go to work 9 to 5 typically, or 9 to 6 or 9 to 9, whatever your work schedule is. We say we have to move that. But then when we don't have to move, we try to be as still and as quiet as possible, rather than, oh, wait, I have to go out and have to be a hiker or a walker or go to the gym. There's many ways that we can get into movement. There's many ways that we can move in our life. And we're going to be offering some different ideas in this episode. And we're going to be talking about things you might have never heard before. And I mean, there's things in this episode that Michael told me that I didn't even know. And I'm not talking about Michael Rearden, I'm talking about Michael Hughes, my guest. So Michael Hughes is going to be coming on and he's going to be helping us understand how we can apply more movement in our life. So let's get into that interview with Michael and myself. Welcome, Michael Hughes, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Of course. And I have you on today as something unique. It's going to be the first time ever you are a movement specialist. And I know when people see this in the thumbnail and they see this on the title, they're going to say, well, what's a movement specialist? So a little bit of clickbait, but at the same time, you're going to be happy you clicked this because you're going to find that Michael has something to say. But without me talking about your whole biography, please tell the people who you are, what you do, and how you help.
As I started out with this whole passion to be a physical therapist, to be in the licensed world of I kind of call it the medical suite in a sense. But what I realized is that I can help way more people by not being on that traditional path. So I always like to look at things on spectrums, and the way I fall into a spectrum is you have that personal trainer who should be really good at making your heart rate get up, burn some calories, keep you accountable, truly. But when problems arise or we need specialized approaches to how people move, but you're not broken or you don't even want to kind of consider that going to the medical route, what's the in between? Where's that gap? So a movement specialist fills that gap. Like we can certainly take care of the workout hard kind of methodology, even though we don't really prescribe to that. But we can also take care of the movement dysfunction side and joint pain and movement pain, and really attaching ourselves to say, wait a minute, we need to fit ourselves to the personality in front of us versus hoping people can just fit where we are. So we bring in that biomechanical specialist concept to really say, wait a minute, how does your body move? Because it depends on you. Everything about my programming depends on the person in front of me, not just some certification or some protocol of way to fix you. So we are specialists of specialties within the movement world. And we've created a training facility that would you say, oh, it's a gym, but in reality, you walk in here. I always like to say it like this because it's kind of fun. A Tesla is a car, but if you ever drove one, it's a whole different experience. So that's kind of how we operate.
Yes. And I know when they think about a fitness trainer, they just think about like their local gym and they're going to have someone walk around with a notebook telling them what to do. And they have to maybe watch their diet. And I know what you do is even more than that. What I wanted to talk to you about today is how important is movement? How important is exercise? And I think many people don't realize how important it is until their back starts to hurt, their knees start to hurt, and then it's too late almost. And it's not too late that we can't make some improvements, but it's like, what have you been doing up to this point where you haven't been paying attention to your health and your fitness? If you can, talk about the importance of moving and being in shape.
Yeah, so it's really fascinating. Again, I always like to define ways of kind of thinking about things. And we have our physical life, we have our mental life, and we have our soulful life, spiritual life, whatever you want to kind of call that. But there's certainly 3 different buckets, if not more, if you want to break that down further. And they all need to work between each other. One cannot function independently by itself and have a thriving life. We certainly know that we can be wheelchair bound and live a great life and have limited movement, but we also know that we can also be bed bound and our mind can still work, but our physicality can't. So if those are kind of the extremes, well, then the other extreme is to have full access to this machinery and how much more vitality that brings to us. So if we start to limit that, which is we're doing a very good job of as a culture and even as an industry, unfortunately, I don't want to pick on our own industry, but we're doing a pretty good job of condensing that down to a package. In reality, we need to express ourselves. So movement, the way we look at it, is one of the best, depending, if not the best way to start anyone's transformation into the other two verticals, mental and spiritual. Because to start chatting someone through some spirituality, you're going to have to go through some pretty big limiting beliefs and to break through that wall. And mentality, kind of the same way of thinking about it. But if you get someone to move, they almost start to change themselves, and they do change themselves. But if we have a joint or a way of thinking of past education that limits that, then I don't know. It's really tough. I've had joint pain in my life. I've thrown out my back before. I'm going to say this as boldly as I can. It sucks because you realize how much you need this machine to work, not even optimally, just well enough. So if we can really hone in on that and also appreciate how the mentality is on that and even how the spirituality or the soulfulness is attached to that, then we can really understand and appreciate that how I move this little joint here literally affects how I move my small toe. And if we can appreciate that, then I think, man, then we start to appreciate everything. We can start to appreciate our nutrition. We start to appreciate nature. We can start to appreciate our family, our relationships. Not saying that everything has to be perfect, but we can respect what we're in. And that, even have that awareness, which my whole talk was just about having awareness of that. I think that unlocks the potential of life personally.
Us as a culture, especially here in America, we have a very American dream-esque type of living, right? We go to school. After we graduate high school or college, we go off and get a job, right? Our typical 9-to-5er. And after our 9-to-5, we might be tired, we might be stressed, we might have family obligations. So we come home and we say that we don't have time for fitness. We don't have time to take care of our well-being. And so it's always on the back burner where we can come home and we can watch 2-3 hours of TV every evening, but we can't maybe spend 30 minutes walking around the block, 30 minutes going to the gym. I mean, you name it, right? Like just putting a little bit of attention into our health and our fitness. And right now we're in February when this episode is going to air. A lot of people have given themselves New Year's resolutions. They said, I'm going to make 2023 the year I get in shape finally, right? So they start strong. January was looking good. Maybe they missed a day or two. February starts to maybe taper down a little bit. There's a few less people in the gym. The treadmills were packed, but now they're no longer packed. And you start to see, well, what's the point, right? I missed so many days. What's the point? And people get into this negative bias of, I can't make changes because I tried and it's too difficult. What are some ways that you help people stay motivated to moving more, I guess, get the health back in their life rather than just simply being still or being complacent or just being a couch potato?
A lot of what we do, we certainly need that internal drive, unless we're all over ads and whatnot, as someone who's in this field or someone to kind of, who's looking to either be in this field or someone who wants to take care of themselves. My first saying is that, like, you can't purchase health. You can hire coaches, you can hire a trainer, you can hire a life coach, but you still got to do the work. Where you can buy entertainment, you can even buy investments, you can buy all kinds of things, but you can't buy health. It's going to take you doing it. And the moment I figure out how to do it for you, I'll let you know. I'll be a billionaire pretty quick. But what I'm really saying is that, like, we have to have that internal drive. And I think what we're finding as those who are coming into this New Year's kind of resolution, which I think we should all have New Year's intentions at the very least, is that we're going to say, gosh, I want to do something that I've always wanted to do, because we know that investments pay off long term. We know that is a principle of life. And if we don't invest in ourselves, then our cup is always empty. And therefore, when we go home, we're going to have to sit and watch some Netflix because I feel too tired. And I don't want to expend energy. I'm already tired. Your body creates energy, literally. So stepping into a facility, I really want people to or into a program, not even into a facility. I want people to kind of really have this one notion. Start easy. Start fun. Start light. You think about anything you haven't done for a long time, especially with me with more low Irish skin tone. If I'm going to hit the summertime, I'm going to be stoked for it. California's getting a lot of bad weather in the time of this filming, and I want some sun. So I'm going to go out there. I'm going to lay out in the sun. I'm going to hit it hard. I'm going to get a sunburn. It's a fact of life. It's a fact of life. So you think training is going to be any different? So we hit it so hard in this one example, like, oh, I don't want to do anything anymore because your body's responding to this fast change. Same way you take too many shots too fast, what's going to happen? You take a few beers over time. So the principles of life fall in with this exact way of saying here. So have fun with it. If you think you got to get on a treadmill to get fit, if you think you got to lift weights like a bodybuilder to get fit, it's time to expand a little bit more of your thinking and remove the old way of thinking and think about someone who says, wait a minute, what if I just play a sport? And the same way, don't just start running for a mile. Don't just jump into a league. You will feel the pain of that. It's really thinking about start practicing like you're in high school, right? You practice for months before the first game. That's how I want you to think about fitness, truly. And don't think double days in football. Remove that, remove that. The second thing I really want people to think about as a motivation piece is that you have to find something, you have to create some sort of plan. You have to have some sort of goal in mind, because if you do the same thing over and over again, and from a repetition standpoint, you will get bored. You can't watch the same movie over again. You can't watch the same series of shows over again. Again, the principles of life filled into this exact same pattern. You have to say, I want to go do something. It doesn't have to be a Spartan race. It doesn't have to be climbing Mount Everest. They'd be like, I kind of like riding my bike. One day I'm going to ride from my town to the next town, whatever it is, something that you can shoot for, because just even in work, even in raising children, if you don't have something to progress towards, you will be bored. And boredom is the first or one of the first ways of kind of, ruining it out for you. So I always like to put something in front of you, dangle that carrot, knowing that, even if it's something really silly, I'm serious, it doesn't have to be the bikini hanging on the door. It doesn't have, seriously, dangle something that's like, I want to physically achieve something. And even if you notice as you're putting away your Christmas present, like, wow, like climbing those attic ladder was tough, or putting that box was tough, get that box back down again and retest. I'm serious. Like if you're a gardener, you haven't been able to pick up that soil bag with ease. That soil bag is a test. And you'll be surprised at how many wins that you start amounting, and you create those little trophies. Now, you don't have to give yourself a bag of soil as a trophy, but you got to think about rewarding yourself through that process through small wins, just like you would do it with your son or your daughter or your dog if you're training your dog, right? Again, these principles of life follow through in everything. And I think that the last one is really the hardest one, but one I wanted to bring up because it's one of those things that we can all work on is, we kind of become our own cheerleader, but we also become our own critic. And I think we play those extremes too extreme. I certainly have my own dysfunction, is I'm too big of a critic. I don't reward myself or just pat myself on the back enough. And so, but some people are too much of a cheerleader, saying, you know what, you enjoy that piece of cake because you deserve it. Like, that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. It's like, well, wait a minute. I don't want to use the word stresses, but that's the right word. You have to stress yourself enough and limit your stress enough to kind of project that forward. And if you do hire a coach or someone who's over enthusiastic and it doesn't meet your personality type, then you got to change your coach. Watch out who your mentors are, because they're going to project how they feel they are on you. Find someone who fits who you are. If you're more easygoing and kind of introverted, find that introverted, guide. Even if it's an Instagram someone or anything, don't try to fit the mold of someone else. Be yourself is what I'm really trying to say. Not your dysfunctional self, your real self, because that's who your coach ultimately is in your life. So those would be kind of my top three that aren't the typical one of eat better and run on a treadmill. Those are the things that, well, you can always say, how's it been going for you?
Yeah. And I love how you explain that, because I haven't heard it that way before. I always hear, okay, well, if you want something, you have to do this, right? So there's just a guide and it's like, boom, boom, boom. You do this, you're going to be successful. And I think what happens to many people is that they give themselves a competition bias or a little bit. So for example, Michael, if you're doing something, I'm going to say, well, Michael's doing this. If I don't climb Mount Everest, then what am I doing? Right. Only thing I did was went to the park that's around the corner and there's no hills there. So I'm going to belittle what I did. And I'm going to just look at you as the marker for what it is to be healthy or what it is to seek fitness or movement. That is not the truth. You can just walk to your mailbox. You can walk around the block. You can go to your local park, run with the dog, run with the kids, right? You can do things like that you might not be doing right now, just paying attention to that. And I love what you said about just pay attention to certain things. Like if you have the box of Christmas gift and you bring it into the attic and you're like, whoa, this is a little bit heavy. All right. Maybe you check it out a week later. It's still heavy, right? Are you doing the work to make that box not as difficult? Challenging or difficult? Because what we do as people is we grow and we get better, right? And if we don't do things, we don't get better. And so if we just sit idly thinking about, well, that box was heavy, there's nothing I can do about it. I guess it's old age, right? So they're just summing up to something else, right? But we have to say, okay, something can be adjusted, something can be changed. And I think that's so important. And you brought up a good point. You just touched on it in the beginning, how to create good energy. And I think that's what people need, because I think people think, well, if I need energy, I need a coffee. I need to drink some Red Bull or some Monsters or some type of energy drink, because that is what I have been told that I need. And I don't think creating good energy is going to come from coffee or from an energy drink. Not saying that you can't enjoy, an occasional coffee, especially if you like it, because I know some people just like coffee for coffee, or if you enjoy an occasional energy drink. But there has to be a better way to create good energy. What would be your recommendations to help people gain better energy so that they can take more action?
That's a great question. And this is something that may surprise a lot of people, but I want people to have a consideration that taking time off. I almost say this with almost every person, because it's kind of one of those principal points once again, is that working harder is not in a fitness sense, in a health sense, is not necessarily going to give you the better result. It may short term. In fact, it will short term, but in midterm and long term, I would guarantee that it's going to do the opposite. I don't want people to think that the harder that they work, the more they can go play. I want people to think that, like in the middle of your day, go take a walk, because the energy starts with our thought process. We like to say, if somebody say, oh, it really starts with your chemical process. Well, give or take, it's, whatever the case is, but it starts with our own process. So if I can go and literally, say like it's my middle of my day, even at work, even as your parent at home, like find that time where you can remove yourself from stimulus. Because if you can't refill your own mental, soulful cup, your physicality is not going to go anywhere. There's no question. So many of us are living from an empty cup, that we are just trying to pour more out of something that's not there. And we live that burnout type of oversensitized life. So this may sound weird, but I actually want you to do less, not do more. I preface this again, not to oversay this, but I think it's so powerful. People realize that the truths of our life correspond to every other truth of our life. And that if I want to invest, in money in stocks, I must put money away to have money grow. My money has to go down out of my bank account before it goes up. And if you want to jump to a higher box, what's your first motion? Down, then up. If you want to become better at school, you have to go to school and reverse your pattern before you go to the other, before you project up. And fitness and health and wellness is no different. We have to first fill our cup before we can expel our cup. So I'm imagining most of us, because we're in this hustle culture, we're going to work harder out of emptiness. So that may sound a little funky to people, but I'll give you a 9 out of 10 that it's going to work.
Yeah, no. And I think many people don't realize how busy their life has become with the invention of the smartphone, all of the TV programs, all of the movie apps. I mean, there's always something that you have to be in front of now. So, I got a new message on my social media. I have to pay attention. Oh, I got 50 new messages. I got a like on Instagram on the picture. I just did a TikTok challenge and everyone's liking it. So we have so many different things and our brain is going every other way. And it's hard for us to focus on the things that matter truly to us, like health and fitness, because we're just so worried about, I guess, status. It's easy to get lost, getting caught up with the Joneses is what they call it, where we just look at our neighbor, what do they have? And then we try to mimic it. But when reality is like, life could be lived minimally, and not just saying your materialistic things, but the things that you do. So people think, well, if I want more money, I need to work more hours. But you just need to focus on, okay, well, if you're in a job 9 to 5, you're making $10 an hour. Well, let's focus on maybe creating a new job where we're creating $20 an hour. Well, some people are just going to say, well, I'm making $10 an hour. That means I have to work 80 hours a week. You just doubled your workload when you just had to pivot, right? So people are stuck sometimes where they are. You said something that I want to touch base on, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but if we do, let's do it. The aspect of cheerleading, right? So if something is happening in your life, like, and this is big with women, is you're big and beautiful, right? Like you go girl, right? So appreciation, that self-image and the cheerleading aspect of it, where someone looks at your life and says, well, you're just fine the way you are, but you might feel real bad on the inside. And I'm not talking about just like emotions. I'm talking about your back hurts, right? You feel a little sluggish, right? You picked up that Christmas box with that bag of soil and you're like, that was heavy, right? My arms are jello now, but we ignore that, right? Because someone said, don't worry about it, right? You're fine just the way you are. Do you think people who tell people that they're fine just the way they are when the person knows that they can make some adjustments should be allowed to do so? Or do you believe that we should look on the inside, what we truly want, and not worry about what society says or what culture says or what other individuals people might think or say about us?
This is something where I'm going to try to be as honest as I can, and I hope people really hear my meaning behind my words. But I believe that self-improvement should always be present. And I'm not saying that taking who you are and saying that's not good enough, but because I feel that our standard of what's good enough has been a falsity, that our culture of health is saying this is good enough. And that's just what our westernized American culture is saying. There's been times I'm saying, no, I'm just going to eat that food because it's delicious and I want to feel good in myself. From a mental standpoint, thumbs up. But there's a consequence to the physical action. And that's a really hard thing to weigh against because that's going to make your body feel chemically unstable. And it's going to make you feel negative. And then you're going to have to reinforce that. So it's really, I wish it was such an easy answer. So my answer always has to be like growth is always needed because there's either growth or there's degradation. And there's no such thing as static. It's not it's not a principle of this world. Nothing is ever static. It's either changing for the better or for the worse. So to be able to say, I'm going to treat myself mentally and have that correspond to positive, physical and spiritual, just to name those three buckets again, it gets confusing if you take societal norms. So my heart behind this is saying that, if we are in a state of where we don't feel it's appropriate based upon, I guess, and this is the hard part because we have to now define health. And what if I'm a little overweight, if I'm a little bit too skinny? So I like to, again, play out the spectrum. 6-pack abs is not healthy, not for longevity. Certainly looks healthy, but your body is so depleted of resources that it looks that way. You have to constantly be feeding it. There's no buffer. Remember, the body finds homeostasis, which is a fancy word for right in the middle. Not too hot, not too cold, not too full, not too empty. So if we're too overweight, so to have an extra 5-10 pounds, honestly, not a big deal. Are you going to have a 6-pack? No. Do you need it? No. But if you have 20, 30 pounds, yeah, your body's actually being stressed by that system. So you may feel okay mentally, and I think that's healthy, but there's more to it than just that. So that's my stance on it. And I really hope people can understand where I'm approaching this is that like we have to avoid the extremes and search for that middle ground, but not perfectly middle because there's no such thing. It's always an ebb and flow. I'm tired, I sleep. I'm hungry, I eat. It's a changing of back and forth, but minimize that scope of extremes. So yes, we're always growing. We're always seeking for something a little bit better. Even if you say, I worked out today, but my workout was literally doing the laundry, I'm serious, with more vigor. And I actually felt, man, that wet towel coming out of those wet towels, that was tough. It sounds so ridiculous, but good job. You did something more than what you were doing. Continue. Versus it's so easy to say, well, look at that guy. Look at that girl. They're doing way more. We cannot take our chapter 1 and measure it against someone else's chapter 75. The comparison in this world because of social media is stupid, but I'm not saying it's easy to fight against, right? It's going to take that self-awareness of where you're at.
A follow-up question I want to ask you, because I know this is something that many people struggle with, is the difference between self-improvement and self-care. What is your take on the difference between those two words or those two terms?
I would like to say that they're one and the same because, you really think about like, if I think about improvement, well, you can improve from any position and you can improve from someone that's really uncareful, that has discare in it in a sense. So, I like to think about self-improvement as a way like that is like my constant barometer. That's my like, how do I want to say this? Like that's my RPM gauge on my car. Am I really caring or am I really improving or am I really not? Like, but the care is my speed. It's like I can stay at 55 miles an hour, but I can really work really hard to do that, or I can not work very hard to do that. So I kind of think like they work together, but they are different. And I like to think care as long-term and improvement as short-term.
I'm going to break it down a little bit and we're going to talk about it too, because self-care has been one of those things that I think mainstream has taken and they had made it popular, right? So self-care could be you eat that cheesecake or you go out on that cruise and you eat all the food you want because you deserve
Care
it.
for yourself.
Yeah, because you work 40 hours for 2 months straight and now you are on vacation, right? Splurge a little bit. It's called self-care, right? So that's what they did to the word. I completely agree with you how you worded it in the beginning. It's like self-care and self-improvement are one and the same. But when we put a spin on it, right, where we said, well, self-care is a moment where someone can just let go and not focus on their diet or what they're consuming. They just have a free for all, right? You want to go out with your friends on the weekend, have a good time, self-care, drink all the beer you want, drink all the shots or sugary drinks. Go for it, right? Because you deserve it, right? And then again, it goes to that cheerleader type of mentality again, because that self-care aspect has been taking over. And I think our life has been taken over by what's so popular. And if we look back just like hundreds of thousands of years ago, people were moving, right? You specialize in moving. People move more. They didn't have cars to take them anywhere. I mean, if you didn't have a car, you probably had a bike. And if you didn't have a bike, you're going to walk. All right. We didn't necessarily.
Or a cart.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So we moved a lot more. We have a very plush life now where everything can be purchased, brought to us. If we don't have a car, we can call a Lyft service, whether it be a taxi, Lyft, Uber, all of these options instead of walking. For example, the gym from my home is about a mile away, right? It takes literally less than 5 minutes to get there in car. Whenever I'm going to the gym, typically I take the car because this is what I do. I work out at the gym. I do cardio at the gym. Now, sometimes I tell my wife, and she's like, I want to go to the gym, but I don't feel like driving. I said, well, walk there. She goes, it's too far. Right. But her and I have walked to the gym before too, just as it was good weather. Let's do it. Right. Now it's kind of like, we're spoiled. We are spoiled by the access of this vehicle. We can get from A to B a lot quicker, but we get so much more if we walk to the gym. Not only our workout, right, our cardio, but intrinsically, I'm getting some sun, I'm getting some fresh air. Things that I think many people are missing now because a lot of people just stay indoors and everything can be done indoors now. You want to have a work meeting? You could do it on Zoom. You want to play video games or meet friends? You could do it over PlayStation. So you can meet and you could still be social, but everything is now inside rather than outside. And I wanted to talk to you about two concepts. The idea of just moving on the outside, being in nature, and then, of course, from where we were to where we are today. And if you think where we're going is going to be beneficial in the long run.
Great question. If you look at just the past 100 years of the human race and going back to where we've come from, if you go back to 1923, yeah, cars were invented. I get it, but that was just when the Model T was coming in strong. If my history is accurate, if I'm not, I apologize, but you get my point. So we were still on horseback. We still had to care for an animal. Like think about the maintenance on a horse versus your car. That's daily maintenance, that's shoveling daily, that's putting a saddle on and off, stirrups on and off. You get my point. So the amount of movement that we have lost in a blip of human history has been nuts. And our body, our physiology, our DNA does not evolve very quickly. It takes generations upon generations to make structural and physiological changes how we operate. Long story short, as we create more automation and more systemized modes of movement for ourselves, we're going to get this leisure lifestyle. And our body's crying for the opposite. Crying is the trigger word. And even that concept, like what says, oh, go treat yourself. Yeah, you should treat yourself, but it should be 10% of the time. Truly, I really believe that. Not 50% of the time or even 20%, whatever the case is. So we're not stopping this S curve. It's only getting steeper. There are going to be homes built that we're going to have a scale in your pantry that know when your peanut butter is at quarter full, and it's going to order it from Amazon and it's going to be dripped to your house. It will. I'm a technologist and I'm a futuristic. That's cool. So what are we going to do about it? Are we going to rot away in our body? You know that we get bed sores in hospitals if we stay for too long in one position. Our skin rots because there's not enough movement. It's crazy. Our body's literally in a vibrational state at all times. We can't feel it because we're used to it. And if that vibration goes too low, disease kicks in. It's crazy. So I am looking forward to the future. I love what's going to happen. But as more and more people got away from farming as their way of life to fulfill themselves, like most of us were just farmers, hunters and gatherers, they become industries. So now movement and fitness will become like, you don't own a car? Are you kidding me? Like, you don't have a dishwasher? Are you kidding? Fitness will become that, but it will not and cannot be on a treadmill or an elliptical machine. I'm not saying it can't be there, but it cannot only be there. And this is where I think where at least our facility is, and a lot of other facilities are coming on board. Our facility is almost wide open space. There's not a single treadmill. There's not a single, well, there's a machine, there's a pulling machine, and there's, that kind of stuff. But like, we need to move in three-dimensional spherical space. And the bodybuilding fitness that we're still hanging on to as a culture, as a Western culture, is not going to cut it. It's just not going to cut it because our body's going to demand more of us to stay healthy, to have self-care. So it's really fascinating. And I want people to kind of understand this. Think about how you played as a child. And if you forgot, go watch children. Go to a park and just watch them. That's how we need to express movement. And I mean this to the day that we die. Like, my back hurts, I can't do that. Then go find someone who can help fix your back. I'm serious. Like, I'm going to be very bold about this one. If we don't express motion, we're going to have a very miserable life. We may be wealthy, we maybe have all these things, but we know if this machine doesn't work, and you ask anybody who's gone to see someone go through dementia or Alzheimer's, or I'll ask someone who's just, one day their body just kind of gave up, but they're mentally there. You ask them which one was better to watch. It's kind of an interesting concept. If we keep this machine healthy, to me, that's the better option. And so movement is going to be much more of, I think, what people say versus I go to the gym. People say, I kind of want people to say, like, I just went and moved today, or I practiced movement. Movement is truly a sport. It's a game of life. And so I want you to practice in the way that you actually live. And bench press is a way that we do things from time to time, but it's certainly a very limited factor in how we actually operate.
When I go work out or just do something, I feel better for it. I know sometimes people might get into the mentality, oh, I don't feel like going out. I don't feel like doing this, right? So they have this intention in their mind that they don't feel like doing it. But after they do it, they're like, I enjoyed that because they went out, they moved, they had an opportunity to get out of the home. It doesn't just have to be going to the gym to get your movement. It can be anywhere. Right now, my parents are older. They're, I think, just approaching 60. So right there. And my sister and I, we both had our children last year. So my parents have their first grandbabies now. And what had happened with my parents, thank you. And what had happened with my parents was they were working. They finally hit that point where they could retire. So then it's kind of like, okay, now we can go downhill now. And so they don't have to keep up with walking. They don't have to do anything, right? Because everything's taken care of for. But now they have grandkids. So now they're thinking in their head, well, how am I going to take them to the park? How am I going to run after them? And so now they're doing more walking. They're doing more things. So like the example you gave about kids playing at the park, right? You have to chase them. You have to run after them, especially like in a situation where you have to protect them. So can you do that? And so when I told my dad that, he was like, very true, because he was just kind of allowing complacency and again, just kind of going downhill. And then he's like, well, I'm gonna start doing my push-ups again. I'm gonna start moving. I'm gonna start walking. And that's what he did. He started walking more. It was just down the street and up the street. So it didn't have to be anything crazy. He didn't have to get a gym membership. He just did it all in the home. And it's all for preparation for when the kids are running around and he has to chase them, right? He wants that But sometimes people don't have that, right? Sometimes they don't have children and they don't have a purpose later on in life. They finally get to the point where they can retire comfortably and they just sit on the sofa, stay still. And you're right. I worked in a nursing home for 6 years in high school and college. And people will get bed sores if they just sit there. And that's why the CNAs will have to take them out of the bed, put them in the wheelchair, do some walking around. They have therapists that would take them down for therapy a couple times a week. That was the way to keep them mobile, to keep them moving. But sometimes I know this happens a lot with our generation, or at least my generation, is that our parents did so much for us and we want them to have a good life. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, just sit down, stay still. I'm going to take care of you. And what that does is it makes them go downhill so much quicker instead of moving. My great grandmother died when she was 99, but she was moving until she was, I would say, 94. And then that's when like she has Alzheimer's kicked in and things like that. But until then, she was cooking, she was cleaning, she was doing everything. And everyone was thinking, just stop, just slow down. And then my grandma had told me, keep letting her do it, keep letting her do it. And then I finally realized that if we stopped her from moving, she wouldn't have made it to 99. She might have made it to maybe 95, 96, and maybe around there. But the fact that she kept on moving gave herself a purpose. I mean, I don't see it often now where you see an 89-year-old able to, walk through Disney World, right? That doesn't happen very frequently, right? Typically, if you have an 89-year-old, heck, 70-year-old, they're going to be in a wheelchair carting them around Disney World. And she was able to walk, no issue. So we have come a long way from making movement a priority, keep on going until the day we can't go no more, instead of just facilitating. Well, you have done already so much, right? Now it's your time to take a break. And I find that phrase that you get to rest now is very dangerous, especially for older individuals, because they are relying on that moving. They're relying on going to the park with their friend or going to the mailbox and things like that. And if you take that away from them, then they lose that movement. And then that's when they start to go downhill and to deteriorate.
Right. Versus let's take breaks now. Mm-hmm. As I'm 38, that's what that daily break, I'm not joking. After this podcast is done recording, I'm going for a walk. I'm going for a hike. I'm not going to go lift weights. I'm going to go get outside. I'm literally just going to do this. I'm just going to express. I'm not going to put any music on. I'm not going to listen to a podcast. I have my times when I do that, but this time is literally de-stressing. So when I come home to my 2 kids and they're going to be high energy and I'm at my lowest energy of the day, I'm ready for them. It's really, so it's like, this whole concept of like work until you retire and then stop. No, that doesn't make sense. And here's the principle behind it. Whatever the body does, the body gets better at. Whatever the mind thinks, the mind gets more thinking at, in a sense. Basically, training and programming works. But be aware, are you training positive or negative? Because if you sit more, you're going to be really good at sitting. But that means you're not going to be good at other things. If you're going to be good at negative critiquing, you're going to be really good at negative critiquing, but you're not going to be good at the opposite. The body does what it gets trained to do. So if you want to get better at movement and fitness, then you have to start again. And I really like this concept of little kids. You got to think how a little kid started to take themselves to walking. And it all started with neck motion, then with body rolling, and then with crawling. I'm going to skip a few steps, right? Then with standing up and holding something, and then with stepping and falling a lot. If we have to take that same methodology towards fitness versus, like, I already know how to walk, Michael, I'm just going to get on a treadmill and go harder. No. You have all those fundamental movements and joint patterns and neurological connections that have been just, I don't want to call stripped from you, but have been dormant. So reactivate them. And I kind of got that idea as you're talking about. I was like, I wonder if I did build a training program that starts with just a bunch of deconditioned people rolling around on the ground. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to really get injured or anything. Maybe a shoulder will get sore. But it's like, we're really going to get so much rotational training and that foundation builds. Anyways, that was a side comment. If you start seeing me post on Instagram, anyone who follows me, then that's why. I'm just testing it out. But I think it may work.
What we talked about today is just the beginning. And I know many people, they're going to listen to this episode and they're going to say, I'm going to do exactly what you're going to do after this recording. I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk. I'm going to do some extra movement. And I want you to understand that good, I want you to do this movement, but I do want you to create some form of habit too. I don't want you just to listen to this and say, well, I moved after I watched that episode. Do I have to watch the episode again so I can get motivated to move? You have to find your true motivation. You have to do that rewiring. You have to learn how to rekindle that inner child within you so you can run and you can play and you can be merry again, because I understand being an adult can be filled with stress and it can have a lot of problems every single day, but don't allow your problems and your circumstances to weigh you down so much where you become still, where you decide that you're going to take it easy because your life is so full of mayhem. Start to unpack it little by little, and then you're going to start to see that being healthy, just making small movements in your day, heck, walking, hiking, that is going to give you so much more stress relief than a bottle of vodka ever would, than sitting on the sofa watching The Office for the umpteenth time. Yes, I understand it's easy, but you get so much more from moving, and moving is going to release all that tension within you. And I want to thank you so much, Michael, for helping us through this journey of understanding what we are capable of as people, because I think sometimes people forget their bare bone instincts and their genetic evolution of who we once were and then who we are now. If you can, please tell us any last words that you want to share, and then tell the audience where they can find you.
The human experience is really so many things and can be, really put together in so many ways. But I always want to say, think back to the times in your life that you were the most joyful, the most fulfilled. And if you're there right now, great job. If you're not there and you're really far away from that, a lot of intensity may be needed to put in to get to a spot where you can kind of start taking those breaks and start taking those other times. But I want you to know that if something is worth having, then it's worth fighting for. And if that's a saying you have to say to yourself over and over and over again, everything that's worth having is worth fighting for. And fight doesn't have to be the right word. It's just stepping stones, another step, another step, another step. And don't forget that step is a huge progress, because you could be going the opposite way. So celebrate your small wins. We have a company called Gymnazo. If you're another trainer looking to kind of thought like, Ash, how do I take what you take and how do I give it to my own clients? I want you to go to gymnazoedu.com. If you're someone who wants to follow us on Instagram, it's the same thing. YouTube channel, the same thing. Our own podcast, the same thing. If you want to follow me on 3D Athlete, 3D_athlete on Instagram.
Okay, perfect. And I will throw all those links in the description box below so people can easily find you and they can begin to take action in their life. And sometimes an action might be a click and you can get to know Michael a little bit more. And then that action is going to lead to more movement in your life. And I have Michael on as a movement specialist, and he's here to get you back to moving in the right order. I want to thank you so much, Michael, for coming on. Great conversation today. Okay.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you.
I would like to thank my guest, Michael Hughes, for coming on Coaching in Session. As you can see, the conversation is going to be filled with things that are going to help you not only become more apt to move, to take action, to get better mental health, but to also understand that your energy level is going to be dependent on your mindset. And I know sometimes people think, well, the reason why I don't have any energy is because I use it all at work. And I'm not saying that you don't have a very stressful job or a strenuous job, but you do have to understand that you always have a little bit more in the tank, whether you want to believe it or not. The brain is going to condition you to say that you don't. The number one thing that the brain does is conserve energy. So if the brain is moving and is doing what it's supposed to do, then it's like, okay, cool. But then eventually you're going to run out of energy. The Monster is not helping. The Red Bull is not helping. You are going to get into this mindset of, we need to stop moving. We need to stop taking actions. We just need to take it easy, sit on the sofa. We deserve this. In reality, we don't deserve anything. We earn what we do. So we can earn good health. You might think you deserve good health, but that's something you have to go for yourself. I can't work out for you. I can't walk for you. I can tell you, I can help you. I can help you understand the basics. And I know Michael can do even more than what I can. Michael Hughes, that is. He can do more because he has a whole facility that is built for moving, creating a space again that you can play and have fun. And I remember, this is a side story a little bit, but I remember the first time I ever went to a trampoline park. This is in Connecticut. And it was about 45 minutes away from where I was living at the time. And I was thinking, this is a long ride. It better be a good time, right? and there was trampolines everywhere. And I'm talking about, this is a warehouse, right? And I'm like, this is cool. They had a foam pit. They had like basketball, dodgeball. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like 26 at the time. I'm like, I wish I had this as a kid. And the only thing I had as a kid growing up was Chuck E. Cheese and Discovery Zone. So if you remember Discovery Zone, then good, right? That was a fun place, right? You got your tunnels, you got your ball pit. Good times, right? Moving, having fun, playing. And I remember the parents just sitting there watching. But just because you're watching, it doesn't mean that they don't care. It doesn't mean that they can't join us. On the trampoline park, guess who's part of it? Parents are also trampolining. They're doing the ball pit or the foam pits, and they're doing all the things that the kids are doing. They're joining in. So there's going to be activities, especially if you have children, that you can do with them. Hiking, I would do hiking every weekend. And it was a way for me to meditate. It was a way for me to de-stress. I was a teacher at the time. And teaching, believe it or not, is very stressful. Even though I was on my A game every single day, every single week, and I didn't have many issues with classroom management or catching up with work. I had to get ready for big concerts, and then sometimes a lot of lesson plans, and it'll take me all day. So like my work day might end at 3:30, but I'm not going to bed until 10:30. So it's a lot. And I understand that teaching is not an easy profession. But what I did was, instead of me just going home and watching movies, which is something I had to get out of because that's what I began to do because I was following the American dream. I was following what I thought I should be doing. Because in college, I worked 66 hours a week. I was very rarely home. And if I was home, it was asleep. And then I was out at work again. And I was always moving, standing up jobs, everything. And then once I started teaching, everything started to change, right? I didn't have to work all those jobs anymore. I didn't have to work in the sense of being on my feet all day. And I was on my feet being a teacher, but it's different because you just work the school day and then after you basically get to sit down. But if you go from one job to the next job and you're standing at both jobs, then you're going to be tired. And I remember whenever the school year would start, I would go in, I would do the first week, and then I would come home and I would take a nap because my body was exhausted because you have summer break. So the summer break was kind of like your period of not taking movement or being immobile. So I've learned that you have to remain active. You have to remain moving. And it's easy for us to get into the mindset of us not to take action. It's easy for us to get into the mindset of, well, this is my life now. We have to keep on moving in some manner. It doesn't have to be big movements, but make some movement today. Make some change today. And then do the work to not only make it a movement today, but tomorrow, and then create that habit. And if you're having a difficult time trying to implement that in your life, reach out to Michael Hughes, check out his website, follow him on Instagram, and you're going to see that you can begin to make more movements. And if you can associate a person with an action, so Michael in movement, Michael Rearden in mindset, begin to take the action to start to change your life for the better. Because if you're struggling right now, it doesn't have to be your tomorrow. So make changes today so that you can run free just like the child you used to be. Not saying that you're childlike or you're still a child, but there's certain things that we have to remember from childhood that are going to make us feel alive. Because just because we grow old, it doesn't mean that we have to be old. We might not know all the cool words and lingo that the young folks know, but at least we can have the same actions that they do. Because when we have those same actions, our body's going to adjust. Our body's going to become stronger. And it's going to be filled with more energy. And if you have more energy, you can have more action. If you have more action, you can create more opportunity in your life. And who doesn't want to create more opportunity? My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone, take care.